My name is Jessica. I turned 25 this year. I got married when I was 19, so it has been 6 years since then. My husband, Sean, works at a labor consultancy firm. He's diligent and works hard. While we were dating, and even after getting married, we never had a fight. We have been enjoying a very peaceful married life. We married young and hence, we live with my husband's parents. Our workplaces are close, and it was a blessing for us that our in-laws helped with household chores. However, the peaceful cohabitation I expected did not come to fruition. It seemed my mother-in-law had some dissatisfaction with me. To be honest, she might have been bewildered by our relationship. Before we started living together, on the day we brought our things to their house, a surprising event awaited. The room we'd cleaned in advance to keep our stuff was filled with clutter. I thought I'd declutter since the room was vacant. That was her explanation. So, Sean and I spent half a day relocating the junk to another room or having it picked up by a recycling shop. Only then could we put our belongings in the room. Throughout, my mother-in-law just sat and drank tea, not offering to help. I was appalled by this behavior. For the first time, I experienced such clear hostility and felt anxious about our future cohabitation. Our wedding went off without a hitch, and as our new shared life began, unforeseen problems arose. Firstly, my mother-in-law stopped doing household chores entirely. Even the chores she used to handle before were now left undone. Since I work, I can't do housework during the day. I now have to manage housework after returning from work, handling laundry early in the morning or preparing it the night before. Worse, even if it rains, she leaves the laundry outside, doing nothing. I tell myself it's better this way to avoid rushing and getting injured. My father-in-law had retired and was living in New Zealand with his eldest son and daughter-in-law, who had invited him there. To be honest, I feel he might not have wanted to continue living with his wife after retirement. Today, upon returning from work, I was greeted by my mother-in-law's harsh words. "You're back at this time again. You work so hard even if it's not for a lot of money. But as a wife, you should prioritize home. What can you even do with your salary?" Seeing her as if she was just waiting for me to come back to taunt me is exhausting. Initially, I was shocked by such remarks, but after 6 years, I've learned to act as if nothing happened. I responded with a nonchalant, "Yes, I see," and didn't let her words bother me. However, this attitude infuriated her. "What's with that attitude? You're not even that great of a wife," she shouted and lunged at me. I tried to move away in surprise, but it was too late, and I fell backward. Enduring the pain from landing on my back, I looked up to see her smiling down at me. "You got what you deserve. Serves you right." The word punishment flashed in my mind. It wasn't punishment, but sheer violence. The eggs I'd bought were now splattered all over the corridor floor. That another chore had been added. If I return even a few minutes late, she behaves like this almost every time. Perhaps one reason we haven't had a child even after 6 years of marriage is due to her. According to her, we're not blessed with a child because I continue working. I couldn't retort to this. Initially, I believed children come naturally after marriage. However, 3 years into our marriage with no child, anxiety led me to a hospital. But the doctor found no issues. Even my husband got checked, and nothing was amiss. When things turn out like this, all you can say is that you have bad luck. I've heard that storks are an endangered species. Maybe they are too busy flying around since there are so few of them, which might be why they don't come here. However, my mother-in-law doesn't think that way. She constantly complained that in the old days, if a child wasn't born within 3 years, the bride should be sent back to her parents. I too am anxious, but she offers no consolation. Instead, as the 4th year approached, she suddenly produced a divorce paper. I was taken aback by this. "Sign it quickly. Leave my son." Her words and her eerie expression made me realize that this was not normal. I usually didn't discuss my mother-in-law with my husband, but this time I contacted him immediately. Fortunately, he left work early and came to help me. If he hadn't come back from overtime, there was a high possibility that I might have signed the divorce paper due to her pressure. That's how intense her momentum was. And the divorce paper incident continued to happen, about twice a year. I was scared of her momentum, so I always carried the divorce paper. I didn't know what she might do. This kind of situation takes a significant toll on one's emotions. When I come home from work, there's hardly any time to truly relax. After working hard during the day, it's natural to want to relax at night. However, my mother-in-law often asks me to run errands even late at night. Recently, around midnight, she told me, "I'm out of facial cleanser. Please buy some." I wanted to rest as it was already bedtime. "Can you use mine for today? I'll buy it for you on my way back from work tomorrow." To which she exaggeratedly responded, "My skin is sensitive unlike yours. If I wash my face with your cleanser, it'll itch. I'll go buy it myself, never mind." I felt it was dangerous for her to go to a convenience store late at night by herself. Reluctantly, I changed out of my pajamas and went to buy the cleanser she uses. However, when I returned home, the front door was locked. I didn't want to keep ringing the bell at such a late hour. So I went around to the window and called my husband. About 10 minutes later, he finally noticed and I was relieved. He unlocked the door and I was finally able to enter the house. It was the peak of winter's cold. In contrast, my mother-in-law was asleep. That day, I decided I had to leave this house. I thought of building a new house and consulted my husband. I told him that living with my mother-in-law was reaching its limit. He remembered the previous divorce paper incident and took my words seriously. "It's not about choosing between me or your mother. We want to create some distance and find common ground." Hearing my sincere feelings, my husband also honestly shared his. He said about having children, "It's tough." He expressed his desire to try infertility treatment in the future and suggested we might want to postpone building a new house for it. He smiled and said that living just the two of us would be fine. I realized that he had been considering various things for me. There are various ways couples feel about children. In the end, we decided not to pursue infertility treatment. We chose to view children as a blessing and decided to wait patiently. Once our direction is set, everything else will probably proceed smoothly. We both felt that we wanted to proceed without letting my mother-in-law know. We did inform my father-in-law, who is currently enjoying life in New Zealand, but he seems to have no plans to return. He adores his first grandchild, the daughter of the eldest brother, and laughed, saying it's hard to be away from her. We carefully considered our home plan and decided to build a small single-story maisonette-style house. Every weekend, we secretly visited housing exhibitions without letting my mother-in-law know. To prevent her from finding out, we stored the brochures at our workplace. My husband suggested that once our new house is built, we could adopt a cat and a dog. This was something I had dreamed of for a long time. And perhaps it was an attempt to console me after I gave up on fertility treatments. I was deeply moved by my husband's subtle kindness. Half a year after making our plans, the house we had secretly been building was completed. It was a home filled with our desires. A catwalk for our cats to enjoy was installed on the living room wall. Looking at our new home, my husband cheerfully suggested, "Once we move in, shall we go to a pet adoption event for rescue cats and dogs? If there's a pair of sibling cats, can we adopt them together?" Of course, I can't imagine separating siblings. Hearing this, I felt truly blessed to be married to him. However, the last obstacle was my mother-in-law. I couldn't move without informing her, so the time came to tell her the truth. My husband had offered to tell his mother about the new house himself. When she found out about our new home, she was shocked but then expressed a desire to see it. It was after dinner, but my husband quickly prepared the car. and the three of us went to see the newly built house. Preparations for the move were already in place. We planned to move this weekend. While showing the new house, my husband revealed our moving schedule to his mother. She was surprised and exclaimed, "So sudden." But she didn't argue. Once the viewing ended, she asked, "Where's my room?" At that moment, my husband and I exchanged glances. He explained that there were plans to renovate his parents' home and that the new house was meant for just the two of us. Throughout this conversation, my mother-in-law looked displeased. She stared sharply at me, probably assuming I had persuaded my husband into this plan. The move went smoothly, and we were able to settle into our new home. I thought I would be freed from household chores with my mother-in-law, but it wasn't that simple. The day after moving to the new house, while we were still unpacking, my mother-in-law visited. My husband, looking perplexed, followed her in. "Mother-in-law, what brings you here?" "It's still a mess." In the living room filled with boxes, I tried to find a place for her to sit. Smiling sweetly, she began to speak. "You see, Mary is coming back." Mary is my husband's sister, who had married and moved out of the state. Assuming it was just a visit, I casually responded, "Oh, really?" But then she made a declaration. "I've discussed with Sean. We'd like this house." I was dumbfounded. I couldn't immediately understand what my mother-in-law was saying. Only after a moment did I realize that she was saying she would give us the house because she and her family were moving to a new home. Mary is getting a divorce and will live with me. That house is too big for just the two of us. And if you two were to have children, it would be cramped, wouldn't it? So, Mary and I will live here instead. In my shocked state, I thought her behavior was incredibly audacious. She looked pleased with her idea, while my husband appeared distressed. Perhaps his sister Mary's influence played a role. My husband has always been very kind and indulgent towards Mary. For us, it was a challenging decision. As she left, my mother-in-law cheerfully repeated, "Please move out by tomorrow." Soon after, I started packing our things again. For a while, there was no interference from my mother-in-law. I asked my husband to let her know we were busy with moving and didn't want to be disturbed. In her absence, I thoroughly explained my plans to my husband. There was a limit to my mother-in-law's behavior. This time, I asked him to indulge my wishes. By the time our plans were ready, Mary returned to the family home. At first, it seemed like a regular visit, but she confessed she was divorced. The issue was bad compatibility with her mother-in-law. Seeing my mother-in-law listening to the story with great interest, saying, "Oh, it must have been tough," I was a bit taken aback. Even though she does the same things herself, it felt hypocritical. And the renovation of my family home was set to begin next week. Our plans for a new house were secretly in progress. It seemed that my mother-in-law believed we were renovating this house for our own comfort as a couple. She probably assumed that she would inherit this new house from us. Now that Mary is back, she took the initiative to speak. "Please leave by tomorrow. Hand over the house to us, will you?" she said, smirking. I felt anger rising within me, but I feigned calmness and smiled. "What are you talking about? There's no house left," I retorted. My mother-in-law was dumbstruck. Mary seemed taken aback by this turn of events. "What do you mean?" She squeezed out the words. "We demolished that house. It's now just vacant land." "Impossible." She stood up suddenly, her face a mix of shock and anger. She then insisted my husband take her to the new house's location, thinking I was bluffing. In the end, the four of us got into my husband's car and headed to the new house's location. "Look over there, mother-in-law. It's already been cleared." I'm not lying. Where the new house had been, there was no trace of any building. Only a sign indicating the land was for sale. My mother-in-law furiously confronted me. "Jessica, just because you don't want to give me and Mary the new house, you did this. This is unbelievable. Are you out of your mind?" she yelled, almost in a frenzy. I remembered all the harassment and overbearing attitude from her. I felt like I finally got back at her. "There's no house left, Mom. We're moving to a small apartment. Since the family home will have renovated plumbing, it'll be more comfortable. Why don't you and Mary live there together?" He asked Mary to let him know if there were any issues with the house. It seemed like Mary was annoyed with her mother, perhaps because she was promised a new house after a divorce. But we felt this was a lucky break for us. Having Mary, my sister-in-law, by the elderly mother-in-law's side was a relief. Now, we can finally leave the in-laws' house. With the new house completely gone, our only place to return to was my family home. The mother-in-law went back, utterly dejected. We called a taxi for her and Mary, and waved them off. She looked aged beyond her years from just an hour's events. Once the taxi was out of sight, my husband and I high-fived, feeling triumphant. "Let's go home." For a rare moment, my husband held my hand. The moment felt special, like we were starting anew. We started walking towards our new home, located just 50 feet away. There's a unique profession called house relocation. They're quite common in my hometown, but not so in other areas. Their job is to move an entire house to a different location. My brother works as a house relocation. I didn't want our newly built house to be taken over by the mother-in-law or destroyed. So, I contacted my brother immediately and explained the situation. My brother and I have been close since childhood. He always looked out for me, just as my husband does for Mary. Recently, due to the frequent natural disasters, he's been swamped with work. Still, he accepted my request. We then proposed to the real estate agent about relocating the house. I understood, even though it was a reckless request. We settled it by agreeing to pay an additional fee and successfully concluded the negotiation. My brother seemed interested in the house relocation business, and with his expertise, he was able to move our new home 50 feet away. In this region, the house relocation job is rare, so many people visit it out of curiosity, making the area lively. I was nervous about my mother-in-law finding out. My brother had inherited his job and house relocation skills from her father, and his skills were truly exceptional. He constantly receives requests for work involving cultural properties, and his techniques are highly regarded. Additionally, my brother allowed us to pay the costs in installments. Thanks to this, we were able to move to our new home. I am filled with gratitude. Later on, our family home was renovated and became more comfortable to live in. My mother-in-law still seems to believe that we live in a cramped apartment. She can't check on our current situation since she's in a nursing home for the elderly, arranged by Mary, her daughter. The reason being, Mary's ex-husband came to the family home insisting on reconciliation, treated as a burden by Mary and others. The mother-in-law ended up in the facility. Mary said she placed her there because of her unstable health, but I thought it was improbable for the mother-in-law, who was energetic enough to meddle in our affairs, to suddenly lose her vigor. In fact, she had opposed Mary's marriage and was one of the reasons Mary divorced. From the perspective of Mary's ex-husband, the mother-in-law was an obstacle. She has been contacting my husband, asking him to get her out of the facility. On the other hand, my husband and I regained our happiness in our new home. Released from the influence of my mother-in-law, peace finally returned to our household. Also, we visited an adoption event for rescue dogs and cats. There, we adopted 3 energetic kittens and 1 adorable puppy. Since then, our days have been lively and full of happiness.